Sauron has regained much of his former strength. He cannot yet take physical form, but his spirit has lost none of its potency.
I see that you have some knowledge of the past, so you should know that humans are no longer allowed in my library. Get out.
I thought anyone could come in if they brought you some new knowledge.
Those are the old rules. Besides, what is the little girl going to teach Wan Chi Tong, he who knows 10,000 things?
This is Apocrypha, where all knowledge is hoarded.
Hey there, gamer. Welcome to D6 Damage. Today I'm talking about one of the most important, but sadly underutilized skills in the game, and that's knowledge. Knowledge really can change the situation for you and your party. Okay, so first off, what is knowledge and what does it represent? Knowledge obviously represents information that you've attained in the past that may be helpful in your present situation. Now first off, it's important to remember that each of the classes gains their knowledge in a different way. A wizard would probably have gained his knowledge in years of study in complex libraries, whereas a bard would have learned what he knows about lore through listening to stories and traveling the land. And a rogue could gain knowledge just by being in situations, gaining practical experience, and listening to people in prison. Let's face it. Now, knowledge, again, represents more than just rote-learned information, although that's one source. It represents also field expertise. You have a good general knowledge base about this field. It can also represent natural intuition. You've seen so many things related to this field, even if it's something you're not familiar with, you can kind of piece out what something is. It can also represent deductive reasoning. Alright, now let's go through the specific knowledge scores and kind of the things that they cover. Starting with Knowledge Arcane. This is one of the most useful knowledge skills, as any game in a fantasy setting is going to have magic come at you eventually. And it also covers a lot of different topics. Knowledge Arcane can cover ancient mysteries, that's old ruins or strange artifacts. Magical traditions. This is like spell schools, magical effects, the history of magic, and particular rituals. Cryptic phrases, so if you ever come up to some random NPC who just throws some weird phrase at you, just roll a Knowledge Arcane. What does that mean? Have I ever heard that before? Arcane symbols, and a number of different monsters, like constructs. This is a category which covers golems and animated objects. Dragons, which covers true drakes, wyverns, lesser drakes, and hydras, as well as magical beasts. These are things like manticores, griffins, and unicorns. Another thing you may want to try with Knowledge Arcane is if you come up against, say, a wizard or a creature which has magical abilities, just roll a Knowledge Arcane to see if you can identify what some of them are. The next knowledge field is dungeoneering. This covers anything underground. That's caverns, caves, underground fortifications, and anything like that. It also covers natural threats and creatures which may be living underground. A big category for those are aberrations. Those are creatures like gibbering mouthers, aboleths, they're the magic deathfish, and croakers, who are these creepy little guys who try and strangle you. Dungeoneering also covers oozes, like the iconic gelatinous cube, the prolific gray ooze, or the not nearly as delicious as it sounds black pudding. It also covers spelunking, that's underground navigation, and underground hazards. Now, if you're, say, in a dungeon or something, try using Knowledge Dungeoneering to try and identify traps or anything which might be protecting the area that you're exploring. Okay, now we have engineering, and this is a little bit more esoteric. Engineering covers buildings, fortifications, bridges, and aqueducts, just to name a few. Some good uses of knowledge engineering are using it to find entrances and exits to a building or fortress. I would also say engineering is a great way to detect secret doors. Then we have geography. Geography covers lands, that's major geographic regions, terrain, these are like land features, mountains, lakes, forests, and people. That's ethnic groups, customs, and traditions. So if you're ever going into a new area, or you just are curious what kind of things you might expect, in an area, try rolling knowledge geography. Just see if you can find out about the flora, the fauna, and things like that. Then we have history. History is a really good general purpose knowledge. It covers wars, colonies, mass migrations, and any kind of important event. So if you're ever told anything about some mysterious somebody, or someone mentions something in a way which sounds like it might be important, just try rolling knowledge history. Alright, then we have knowledge local. Knowledge local is, again, one of the really useful ones. It covers things like legends, that's urban legends and folklore, laws, rules and customs, and humanoids. So if you have a character like a rogue that has good knowledge local, that would be a good way to find out about any humanoid enemies that you're going up against. Like, let me give you an example. Say you're going up against some bandits. Try rolling knowledge local to find out what weapons they use, or if they have any casters working with them. All of that is helpful information. Another big one is knowledge nature. This covers animals, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! Fae, like dryads, nymphs, and leprechauns. Monstrous humanoids, like hags, gargoyles, and minotaurs. Plants, that's both plant creatures and dangerous flora, like some of the dangerous and horrifying funguses you can find on page 416 of the core rulebook. Seasons, and vermin, like rats and spiders. Knowledge nature can be a good way to rule things out, like if you come across some mysterious phenomenon along your journey, just roll knowledge nature. Is that natural? It probably isn't. Then there's nobility. Nobility is one of those soft options, but it can be helpful. So it covers things like lineage, that's who's related to who. It can also be used to give you an idea of government systems and how they work. Also, as a good rule of thumb, if you're meeting anyone important, that's a king, a lord, a general, a duke, a baron, just roll knowledge nobility. See if you can learn anything about him or her. The last knowledge is knowledge religion. This covers some fairly obvious things like gods and goddesses, religious history, cults, which can be fairly hefty in games like this, and undead. I'm not really sure why it covers undead, honestly, but it does. And those are things like skeletons, vampires, and ghouls. Alright, now let's talk about some of the general DCs that you'll be working with. To find out common information, it's generally a DC 10. For basic information, DC 15, and for more difficult or esoteric forms of information, it's going to be around a DC 20 to 30. Knowledge is also really good for finding out about the strengths, weaknesses, and special abilities of monsters that you fight. The general formula is going to be 10 plus CR for most creatures. For common things like goblins, it's going to be 5 plus CR. And for rare, spooky, or mysterious creatures, that's going to be a 15 to 20 to whatever the DM decides to make it, plus CR. Now, as a general rule, this is mostly for DMs, for every 5 they exceed the knowledge roll, it's good to give them some additional information. Now, with action economy, making a knowledge check is generally a free action. And also remember that you're not really allowed to reroll knowledge checks because the knowledge check shows what you know. And rolling it again doesn't help you remember information that you never learned in the first place. Another useful tip is to be specific with what you're rolling for. The easier you make it on your DM, the easier it is for them to help you out and give you the kind of information which is gonna help you be successful. Finally, I want to introduce you to a cool concept from 3.5 related to knowledges that I think it would be a good idea for DMs to employ in Pathfinder. It's called synergy. Basically, what this means is if you've been putting points into a knowledge score, that gives you boosts to other skills. Some of the things they have listed as synergies are, if you have 5 or more points in Knowledge Arcane, you get a +2 bonus to Spellcraft. If you have 5 or more points in Knowledge Architecture and Engineering, this would just be Knowledge Engineering. You get a +2 bonus on search checks to find hidden doors. If you have 5 or more points in Knowledge Geography, you get a +2 bonus on survival checks. If you have 5 or more points in Knowledge History, you get a +2 bonus on Bardic Knowledge checks. And if you have 5 or more ranks in Knowledge Local, you get a +2 bonus on Gather Information checks. Now, as a player, just remember, if you can make a case for it to your DM, go ahead and do it. If you're like a sorcerer or something with really high Knowledge Arcane, and you don't really use Spellcraft because it's not your thing, ask your DM if you can get a +2 to use Magical Device. If you're a fighter with a lot of points in knowledge engineering, ask if you can have a +2 on Sunder attempts. Remember, knowledge, like a lot of things in D&D, favors the creative. I hope you found this video about the knowledge skill in Pathfinder helpful. And if you're interested in more class analysis or build guides, check out D6 Damage right here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.